Welcome into the college football every game on the board podcast simulcast on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. We got our first handicapper up. He's hot right now in college football. Check him out at sportsmemo.com. Mid-major Matt, welcome in, buddy. How you feeling?
Doing good. Enjoyed a little action last night. We saw a guy run for 300 yards, and we saw a team put up 69 points. And I was clairvoyant, Drew. I saw a garbage time touchdown coming from Bowling Green, and it happened last night. Granted, it was 4 minutes left, but it still was garbage time. So it was a good night in the MAC.
It did. You had the crystal ball. You called it before. Guys, you can go back and watch it on the MAC, Every Game on the Board podcast. It is yesterday's college football show. You can find it on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. In today's show, we're going Thursday, Friday college football games. So the rest of the weekday games here. And the Saturday board in this section down to 347, 348, App State versus Coastal Carolina in the Sun Belt. So that's the section for right now with Mid-Major Matt. Then we'll bring in Robbie Vino and go down the next section of Saturday's games. So this is the college football Every Game on the Board podcast. And Matt, like we were just talking off air, Thursday, we had one go down here. Game was postponed. Utah State versus Wyoming doesn't look like it's going to happen. So we just got one singled out Thursday college football game. And to tell you the truth, it's a good one here. Tulane versus Tulsa. Two, I would say, well-coached teams, at least on the Willie Fritz side. 53.5 being the total. We got the Tulsa Hurricane here, -6, -6.5, depending what sports book you're going off of here. 25th ranked Tulsa, by the way, Matt. What are you thinking here? Laying the number with Tulsa at home in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Well, we talked about it during the Best Damn Sports Show, Best Damn College Football preview yesterday, and I'll kind of reiterate some of the points I made there. Look, Tulsa, I mean, they've got to be feeling good. That was one of my winners last week was Tulsa. They beat SMU, and they come back and get that victory late. And when you look at the whole Tulsa, you're talking defense. I mean, they're holding teams to 370 yards of offense, 21.8 points per game. It's the 19th lowest total in the nation at 4.88 yards per play. The problem with Tulsa is they're a slow starting team, notoriously down 23-5 in the first half to UCF, 17-3 to East Carolina, 21-0 to SMU. And so you hope that there's a team that could take advantage of it. And maybe Tulane could be that team. I'm a big fan of Willie Fritz. They won this game last year, 38-26, and they're coming off the Army game. And you know, we talked about in the other show, it is a bit of a concern that Tulane is coming off the Army game because it's a special kind of game when you're going up against the triple option, the constant chop blocks to your knees and things like that. But I think a team like Tulane should be able to handle something like that. And I'm really impressed with Tulane's quarterback, Michael Pratt. You know, he was sacked 15 times in his first 3 starts. He's been sacked 5 times in his last 3. To me, Drew, I'm looking at Tulane in the first half here. I mean, once is a rarity. Twice is we're starting to head towards a trend, and 3 times. Look, Tulsa's just a slow starting team, and I wonder what the hangover or the residue is from an SMU win last week. I know they're probably feeling good. They're home. But Tulane in the first half might be worth a look here, especially if Tulsa starts out slow once again. You can get Tulane potentially at 3.5 points to score in the first quarter. I would potentially look over there. I think there's a chance Tulane gets a touchdown early. That offense can move the ball a little bit on this Tulsa team.
Okay, good stuff to start off here, guys. And like Matt said, you can go back to the Best Damn College Football show yesterday as well. And Robbie Vino joined us, and we broke this game down in depth. So that does it for the Thursday college football. We got Friday's slate here with 4 games. A lot of college football action here going in rotation order. We got 325, 326 here. Syracuse, you're an alumni of Syracuse, I believe, Mid-Major Matt, at Louisville. Louisville -18, 56.5 being the total.
Yeah, sadly, my diploma says I am alumnus of this school, and they're coming off a bye week, which is really good because I didn't have to stress over a loss last week. And then 2 weeks ago, they lost at home 16-13 to BC in a game that was the ultimate sandwich for BC between Clemson and Notre Dame. So we know why they laid an egg there. Syracuse's offense has scored 21 or less in all but 2 games. They may be starting the true freshman quarterback, Jacoby and Morgan. We don't know. The coach kind of alluded to it, but he also wants to get Rex Culpepper some time. It doesn't matter. They have one of the worst rushing defenses in the country at over 220 yards per game allowed on the ground. I mean, there's not a lot to like about Syracuse. They have been ravaged by injuries. They had some opt-outs before the season began, but this is a team that's just not very good. The problem is Louisville's not very good either. They lost last week 31-17 to Virginia. You really can't do anything until you find out about their COVID absences. Losing Tutu Atwell last week and not having Javian Hawkins was pretty big. They had a bunch of defensive linemen who were out that they hope will be back this week. Tabarius Peterson, Yaya Diaby, and Derek Dorsey, which is big because their defense needs all those defensive linemen. Javian Hawkins opted out, which is a bad sign. And Drew, it's something we're going to have to watch out for as we get close to the end here. There are a lot of players on bad teams who are just going to opt out. And then if they start opting out, maybe others opt out, and it kind of gives you a temperature of how the team is. Malik Cunningham last week had 161 yards passing, 197 yards rushing, and 2 touchdowns against Virginia. DFS players on Friday, please put Malik Cunningham in your lineup. I can't trust either of these two teams, Drew. This could be and should be an easy win for Louisville, but when you see a player of Javian Hawkins's status opt out, I mean, that might give me a sign that where this team's headed at. Neither of these two teams are going bowling. There's not much of a future for either of these two teams, so I'm going to probably pass. If you really want to play the game, I'd lean Louisville. They should probably win this game easily, but who knows where their head's at right now.
That's a good point, Mid-Major Matt, in terms of guys opting out, something to watch here. College football teams kind of quitting on the season has been a great fade in years past. I would think it's even exponentially a great fade this season in terms of kind of college football teams quitting on the year, especially bad football teams with guys not wanting to play in front of no fans. Something I'm definitely going to watch, Mid-Major Matt. We got Purdue, Minnesota in the Big Ten. Purdue minus 3-point road favorite, 63 the total in Minneapolis.
Well, I'll be interested to hear your opinion on this game as well. Big Ten, not necessarily my biggest focus, but from what I can read in terms of the stats here, Minnesota won this game last year on the road. Purdue they lost it 27-20 to Northwestern. I watched bits and pieces of that game. Their only win was by 7 at Illinois when Illinois was on like their 5th string quarterback. Xander Horvath has been impressive for Purdue. Last game, he had 9 catches for 100 yards. He became the first Purdue running back with 100 receiving yards or more in 23 seasons. I mean, the big question is Rondale Moore eventually going to play? I mean, I don't know. They keep saying, oh, he's on the practice field. There's little birdies saying he might play, and we don't know. And if you get Rondale Moore out there with the other wide receiver they have, you've got a decent offense there for Purdue. On the Minnesota side, you've got a bad defense. They lose 35-7 to Iowa last week. Mohamed Ibrahim, it has 130 carries in 4 games. 130 carries in 4 games. My crude math says that's over 30-ish carries per game. He does have 10 touchdowns, though. Another guy you want to try and fit in your DFS lineups. In 20 trips inside the red zone, the Golden Gophers have given up 15 touchdowns. I don't like either of these two teams, Drew. This is an easy pass for me because I don't do enough on the Big Ten, and neither of these teams have like this massive edge. Minnesota's defense is terrible. Purdue's offense is good, but Purdue's defense isn't great, so maybe it's an over. I just don't see anything here. This is an easy pass. Anything on your end?
It's an easy pass for me, Mid-Major Matt. We got 329-330 New Mexico at Air Force. I got something here for you if you'd like it. Falcons minus 7 at home, 55.5 being the total.
Sure. Why don't you? What do you have for us?
All right. I don't want to steal your thunder, man, because I got a lot of good stuff here. I was going to let you go first.
Oh, sure. Okay. So Air Force has been off for 3 weeks, 2 weeks essentially. They last played on Halloween. They lost 49-30 to Boise. They didn't have enough players to compete 2 weeks ago due to COVID. So to me, Air Force runs such a precision type offense that when you don't have all your players and you're practicing within short groups and everything, it's a concern to me. And you look at this New Mexico team, they lost 27-20 to Nevada. They also have lost 38-21 and 39-33. So they're putting up some points. They're also giving up some points. 55.5 seems a little low here. It does, and maybe what you do is you live bet it. You let Air Force get the kinks out early. When they start rolling in maybe the second quarter, you get a lower total on the over here. But I kind of like this New Mexico team. It'll be interesting to see who's going to be their starting quarterback. Trey Hall started the last game. Tavaka Tuiati had the concussion against Hawaii. So to me, Drew, I mean, New Mexico could be live here if you get a rusty Air Force team. But to me, I might live bet the over and hope that Air Force is rusty but figures things out mid-game.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I like the underdog here as well. Maybe sprinkle a little bit on the money line because you are going up against an option team. So if you can stop the option in the first quarter, you're likely going to be able to stop it all game long. That's something, you can kind of not bank on when betting on or against option teams, but it's something that seems to be a trend here. And do want to give a shout out to the Gold Sheet with some of these stats because they tipped me off on it. New Mexico, 2 straight covers versus Hawaii and Nevada, 2 at least middle conference teams here. New Mexico defensive coordinator Rocky Long at San Diego State was 7-0 versus the Air Force option, and combine that with the fact the New Mexico team under Bob Davie awful. They were awful. I believe they only had 4 against the spread wins in the last 3 years, meaning their high of each of the last 3 years was 4 wins in that season. They've been a great bet against, but against Air Force, they're 7-1 their last 8 tries against the spread against Air Force. So these kids, combined with the fact that Rocky Long, the DC now at New Mexico, is great at stopping the option attack of Air Force. Combine that with Air Force 2 straight up and ATS losses against San Jose State and Boise. Plus, like you talked about the last 2 weeks, COVID has kept them from playing. I think that they're going to be rocky as well. So I like the underdog here. The New Mexico Lobos +7 is something I bet personally. And in hearing what you said, I like a money line as well, mid-major Matt.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of good stats there. And it's look, if Air Force figures things out early, then New Mexico's in a bit of trouble. But maybe you take like a New Mexico first quarter or first half. You hope that the early prep and the early rust goes in and Air Force struggles a little bit. But yeah, I see all that logic, and I'll probably end up being on New Mexico as well.
And it looks like Davy Jones, Joe Martinez, Alan in the chat box all agreeing with us. So this might be a podcast kind of consensus play here on the Lobos over the Air Force Falcons. So we got last one here, I guess Friday Night Lights, the nightcap. UMass versus FAU. And mid-major Matt, I know you're excited to talk this one. Who can't be? If you have any degenerate in your blood, this is one you want to be betting. We got 50.5 being the total, -32.5. That is FAU at home in Boca Raton. Mid-major Matt, degenerate special written all over this. Which way are you going?
Paycheck game for UMass. UMass is going to play 4 games. I read that these 4 games, because they've got Liberty also on their schedule. That's it. They're not adding any more. Basically, UMass decided they're going to come back and play football, and they basically added games as teams needed them to. They lost 51-10 to Marshall. They lost 41-0 to Georgia Southern. When you look at this UMass team, the irony is, so we've talked about first quarter and first half team totals. Last week against Marshall, the first half and the first quarter team totals were a half a point. And they scored, obviously, in the first half. So if you took the over, my goodness, you got lucky because they actually scored here. UMass has played 3 quarterbacks in one game, 2 quarterbacks in another game. None of them have been very good. This is a question of how much does FAU want it? And, coming off the Shula Bowl win, with bigger fish to fry, I wonder how they show up here. The defense has allowed just 65 points in 5 games. The Posey kid was ridiculous. I was watching that game start to finish. He was 182 yards rushing in the win over FIU. He replaced Nick Troney, who went 3-1 as a starter, but Posey was pretty good, although Willie Taggart did not commit to who will start this game. The one thing, if you want to look at the FAU side, is that if they take one guy out, the other guy is going to come in. You'll get some sort of continuity here. I think the FAU team total over at 41.5 might be worth a look here. I think FAU can name their score here. Their offense isn't great, but UMass's defense is so bad. And as I said, if you have 2 competent quarterbacks, you take the first one out, you put the next one in, at least there won't be that much of a downfall when it comes to the offense.
Yeah, this is a tough one, mid-major Matt. And you bring up the quarterback change at FAU. As a sports bettors, finding change, and did anything happen differently? I mean, what about the rushes? 18 rush attempts for over 180 yards from Posey, I think is his name, the new quarterback there for FAU. That might be something to watch with a spark offensively. They put up 38 points against FIU. You think it could actually be a bet on opportunity?
I mean, but the problem was FIU's defense is terrible, and FAU, they literally didn't do very much. I mean, it was very frustrating in terms of their offense was basically snapped. It was a Madden offense. For those of you in the chat and True who play Madden, when you had Michael Vick or you had Lamar Jackson, you just basically take the quarterback and you run around and you just let him do everything. And that's kind of what FAU did. Now, it should probably work against UMass. We've seen both teams score 41 and 51 against them, but FAU's offense is not as good as Marshall's, and it's not as good as Georgia Southern. If you were for the degenerate special to bet anything, I would say the FAU team total over. But once again, with a couple games on Friday and other things to do on Saturday, it's a recommendation. It's not a you must play this situation.
Okay, that is on CBS Sports Network there, 8 o'clock on Friday night. So we got Saturday's slate here, guys. We're talking with Mid-Major Matt on Twitter at Mid-Major Matt. A good follow, especially during Maction. If he's winning, he'll let you know. If he's losing, you'll be able to tell by the tone in his tweets. But we'll move on to Saturday's action here. We got UCLA and Oregon, 331, 332, the rotation numbers here. 1 o'clock kick in the Pac-12. That's Eastern, so a 10 a.m. Pacific kick here. 66.5 being the total, minus 13.5. That's Oregon at home.
Joe Moorhead's doing really good things with this Oregon team, coming off the 43-29 win at Wazoo. Tyler Shaw, I think is how you say it, the only quarterback nationally with 200 yards passing and 80 yards rushing in each of his first 2 games this season. They are still without a bunch of tight ends, and they put up a lot. They're averaging 8.2 yards per play, 7.2 yards per rush. UCLA looked really good against a Cal team where they actually had the coaching advantage for once. I mean, I'm not a big UCLA guy. Their defense was a whole lot better, but I'm not a huge fan of Cal's offense. Once again, this is not my wheelhouse in terms of the Pac-12. I kind of just skip these games usually, so numbers-wise, it looks like Oregon's the better team here, Drew. But, I mean, are you ready to lay 14.5? Weird time. It's going to be bright and early. Are you going to get a good effort right away from both of these teams? So, to me, it's an easy pass.
Yeah, I'm already 0-1 betting UCLA games. I touched the Cal side. And DTR, he looked a lot better at the quarterback position. So, I don't know. I'm going to stay away from this one as well, mid-major Matt. We got 3:30 kick here Eastern time, 12:30 Pacific in the Big Ten, Iowa, Penn State. Looks like the Hawkeyes, -2 in the hook on the road, 47 the total in Happy Valley.
As someone who despises Penn State, I am enjoying their demise right now. But I feel like pride has to come in at some point. I just feel like, this is a Penn State team. I know. Look, they say they basically said, look, last game. All right. So they lose the first game to Indiana. Then they go and they give it their all for Ohio State. They don't beat Ohio State. Then they lose their third game because there probably was a hangover. And then I think at 0-3, they're like, what the hell are we playing for? And they lose at Nebraska. Now, they did have over 500 yards of offense last week, and they held the Cornhuskers to under 300, but they lost. They fell behind. Clifford wasn't very good. I feel like pride has to come into play for this game. James Franklin said yesterday that the Nittany Lions had 39 false positives, which hampered them in continuity in practice and game prep. I feel like at some point Penn State has to play like we all expected them to. There's no sort of handicapping here. It's just basically a feel for me. I'm not going to say it's a massive, it's just a lean right now, but I think, Drew, their pride has to come into play with this Penn State team. They're home. I know there won't be any fans, but I feel like this is the Nittany Lions game here. I'm not a big fan of Iowa. I'm not a fan of that Petrus kid. I think he's okay. He's got good weapons, but to me, Drew, pride rules out here, and based on no handicapping whatsoever, this is a feel thing. I feel like Penn State gives a really good effort and gets their first win of the season.
All right, moving on to the ACC. We got Virginia Tech at Pitt here, Matt. Looks like the Hokies, -3-point road favorites, 55 the total.
So obviously I'm in Hokie country here and very disappointed to see what they did last week. I mean, this is a Tech team that's lost 3 of their last 4. They had a chance to make the ACC championship game, but they didn't play very well. And this week we had a couple of opt-outs there. Redshirt sophomore linebacker Keshawn Artist and backup redshirt junior defenseman Zion DeBose both opted out. Another backup offensive lineman medically retired. And, Tech has had some COVID issues all year long. The Jermaine Waller's been in and out of the lineup. It's really hard on a game-to-game basis to know what Tech is doing in terms of their defense, in terms of COVID as well. Khalil Herbert played last week, but was kind of a decoy, so that really hurts their offense. And you've got a Pitt team who had the COVID issues last week. They beat Florida State 41-17. They returned to practice yesterday. There was a story that basically said an unnamed main player tested positive for COVID. So many question marks on both sides here. Drew, I lean to Pittsburgh here, but I also need to wait till close to game day to find out who is COVID and who doesn't, because Pitt is not good enough to withstand certain players being out. I lean to Pitt here, especially at home. I wonder what Tech's mindset is, but I can't lock it in till close to kickoff until we find out who some of these players are. And unfortunately, that's probably the time we're going to find out.
Fair enough, mid-major Matt. We got ECU at Temple up next in the AAC, 57.5 being the total with the Pirates. That's the ECU Pirates, -3 in the hook, road favorites.
So I'm an alumnus of Syracuse, and I'm a former season ticket holder for Temple. I'm a big Temple fan. So it's been a miserable college football season so far. And if you got in early enough and you got ECU at +3, good for you, because it's obviously the other way now. And the reason why is because Temple's down to their 4th string quarterback. Freshman Matt Duncan is going to start. He played a little bit against UCF, and it was basically a lot of handoffs and safe plays and things like that. And in one respect, it's going to be good for them because there's not a lot of film on this quarterback. But when you hear from your head coach that he basically would not have played these games and would not play these last few games because Temple's had so much COVID and injury issues, that's not a good sign for a mindset for this team. The problem is I'm not ready to just basically take ECU as a road favorite. I know there's no atmosphere. I know that this is, it's a road game only and that they're playing in Philadelphia and they're not playing in East Carolina. But are you ready to just lay points with East Carolina on the road? They're the better team. Holt Nailers is the best player on the field probably for both teams in this game. I just don't know if I can lay the points here. ECU's the better team. If you want to tie an ECU money line in with something else and you want to do some sort of parlay or some sort of teaser with ECU, I can do that. But I know Temple's down to their freshman quarterback, but I'm not ready to just say, hey, let me take ECU here, because how often are they the better team and they actually play like the better team? So to me, it's a teaser parlay in terms of the ECU money line or something with that ECU side, because I'm not ready to lay points. And this line could go up even more. Who knows? You may also want to wait and see who else is out for Temple, because if they've got more COVID issues, then who knows? Maybe the line keeps going up. It gets up to 6, and then you just tease it down to ECU winning, and then that's all you need.
He's Mid-Major Matt, sportsmemo.com. He won last night on the Kent State team total over, which hit pretty easily. He's also 28-14 this season in college football team totals. He's also doing NFL team totals to a high success rate, 9-4 in a shorter sample size here, guys. But since week 2 of the college football season, he's 53-35. That's 60% college football since week 2. So he's seeing it well in college football, guys. Check him out. All of his packages, sportsmemo.com. And remember the coupon code, MATT30. It's a new coupon code, actually, MATT30. And get 30 days of college football for only $99. That is $70 off the regular price. He's been red hot in college football. That coupon code is MATT30, and use it for the discount on the 30-day package for Mid-Major Matt at sportsmemo.com. Mid-Major Matt, next game up in the AAC, a good one here, 343-344, Cincinnati at UCF, 63.5 being the total in the bounce house. Cincinnati -5.5 or -6, depending what sports book. And guys, this is another game we broke down in yesterday's college football show. So if you want to in-depth look at this Cincinnati UCF game, go check that out. It's the best damn college football show we recorded yesterday. But Mid-Major Matt, any quick thoughts here before we move down the card?
Yeah, quick thoughts here. I mean, Cincinnati is a really good team against the spread. They're built to beat a team like UCF. UCF is not built. Their defense is not tough enough to grind it out with Cincinnati. I could see a lot of Dokes and Ford in this game. I could see, the Bearcats kind of grinding things out a little bit. I've talked about how I don't love Desmond Ridder. I think he's gotten fat and happy, or fat and sassy, as Marco would say, against teams that aren't very good. He's put up good numbers, and he's playing well right now, but I don't know necessarily if I trust Desmond Ridder. This is the type of game that I let Dokes and Ford do a lot of the work here. I don't like UCF as a home dog here. I know that you have some thoughts about that, but UCF is a team that wants to win. They want to throw the ball deep. They want to beat you in a kind of a, they're not a mucker and grinder type team, whereas Cincinnati is. And usually I lean to those things. And remember, as we talked about yesterday, the home field advantage, I probably would have leaned to UCF if the bounce house was bouncing, but there's no atmosphere. There's nothing here to equalize this sort of thing. So to me, I think Cincinnati's in play here. I think Cincinnati's the better team. And once again, remember, if this thing's up, they've got to put some style points up there. So if they're winning, they're going to keep scoring because they have to impress the committee here. So it's a lean to Cincinnati. You can get more from Rob and you on the Best Damn College Football Show.
Yeah, good thoughts there, Mid-Major Matt. Do want to throw out, it looks like 80 degrees, possible 10 to 15 mile an hour winds. Now we're talking a few days before the game, and we're talking Florida weather here, so you're going to need to watch that. It can change pretty fast, but that's something that wouldn't necessarily help UCF. Plus the fact you talked about, it just being 2020 and home field advantage, UCF is a home dog. Look, UCF has been hurt by 2020. There's no doubt about it, Mid-Major Matt. I mean, they had 10 guys opt out before the season. They just had 4 kicked off the team due to a gun in the car incident. It just hasn't been, and plus the fact, like you talked about, being in the bounce house, one of, if not the most, home advantages in the group of 5, and they're going to have reduced fans. So it's not, as big of an advantage as it would be in prior years. So I think that's all speaking towards this huge line move. Circa here in Las Vegas, the openers for college football, opened this pick'em, and we're now seeing it as high as Cincinnati -6. So almost a full touchdown move here towards Cincinnati. I personally like the over, but we're going to need to watch that weather. We're talking UCF and talking offense here. They're number one in a bunch of categories offensively. And one of the most important here being their tempo number one. So they can throw it around. And I think they'll be able to score, and Cincinnati will be able to score on UCF's defense, which is not very strong. So I'm looking towards the over of 63 in that one, guys. We got Mississippi State at Georgia. We're seeing the Georgia Bulldogs -25 home favorites in the next matchup here, mid-major Matt, 44.5 being the total.
So you're the SEC expert, so I'll just at least give some facts and stuff that I read, and then you can either refute them and tell me that I'm wrong. But I mean, Mississippi State just had another guy opt out today, and Mike Leach talked about how if you see guys opt out and leave, it's on purpose, that they couldn't handle his style and they couldn't. And look, this is a team that just came off a week off. They beat Vanderbilt 24-17. They've scored 54 points in 5 games since that LSU blow up. And basically, teams have figured out you play some zone, and it makes things difficult. Costello's been terrible. I know they've got that freshman kid. The thing with Georgia is Georgia's defense is better up front in the front 7. Their 2 losses this year, they get 417 passing yards to Alabama, 474 to Florida. But then you've got a Georgia team that had the week off after losing the world's largest cocktail game. They're second in the league in sacks with 18. Mississippi State's allowed more than 3 sacks per game. And Stetson Bennett's back at practice. So to me, Drew, it seems like this is a Georgia-type game here. But, I mean, if Mississippi State does get some passes off, there might be some completions there because Georgia looks like they're a little vulnerable in the back end. But will they have time to do that, Drew? So I got nothing here. What's your thoughts on this game?
I think Mississippi State is going to have a tough time moving the ball against this Georgia defense, even though they are banged up. They just haven't moved the ball against many defenses at all. So I don't see many reasons why they're going to be able to do it on the road at Georgia. So it would be Georgia or pass, and I'll likely pass mid-major Matt. We got one game left here, guys. With mid-major Matt, then we'll bring in Robbie Vino for the next section. And remember the coupon code MATT30, that's MATT30 for discount on his 30-day college football for only $99. It's regularly $169. So $70 off there using the coupon code MATT30 for his 30-day package there at sportsmemo.com. He's seeing the team totals both in college football and the NFL very well. We got Sunbelt 347-348 to end it here, mid-major Matt. App State versus Coastal Carolina. We got Coastal Carolina -5 in the hook at home, 48 being the total.
By the way, once again, another game we talked about yesterday, so make sure to check that out. Those were the games that we did yesterday on the Best Damn College Football Show. But to me, basically, this is a high-powered game here. But when, everybody talks about Coastal Carolina's offense, but it's their defense. They've allowed just 20 points their last 3 games: Georgia Southern, Georgia State, and South Alabama. They've had 13 days to prepare. Their last game was November 8th when they beat South Alabama here. I think Coastal's offense is going to have a little bit of a problem with App State, but I also think App State's offense is going to have a little bit of a problem. We don't know about Zach Thomas's status yet. We don't know about Dietrich Harrington, the running back. Most likely he's out. So App State could struggle here. This seems like an under, Drew. It seems like a game where both teams are going to be punting a lot potentially and playing some defense here. So it's a lean to the under here. I need to know more about the status of Zach Thomas. Jacob Huseman, their backup, has at least been in the system and has thrown passes in live games. So it's not like they're throwing somebody completely to the fire here, but it's a lean to the under here between these two, as we talked about yesterday.
All right, good stuff from mid-major Matt. Guys, check out his packages, sportsmemo.com, and the coupon code MATT30 at checkout for his 30-day package at sportsmemo.com. Mid-major Matt, you want to throw out anything before we shut this down?
Well, we got to do the quick VIP games. We got 3 VIP games for the listeners and the watchers.
All right, let's do it. Three VIP games.
First off, we lost Louisiana and their opponent, Central Arkansas. That was sad. Louisiana's had some COVID issues. All right, so 3 games. Stephen F. Austin at Memphis. Memphis about a 30.5-point favorite. Stephen F. Austin 6-3 in the season. They've played 3 FBS opponents so far. They lost 24-14 at UTEP, 24-10 at UTSA, 50-7 at SMU. Defensive-based team here. They've struggled against their best offense. They gave up those 50 points to SMU. Memphis is coming off the bye week. They're on my S list after the fact that they couldn't score and hit us our 5% $2 play 2 weeks ago against South Florida. I was concerned about how much they were still in this season. They can't win the AAC championship, so I'm a little concerned here. Their defense isn't great, but if Stephen F. Austin can't take advantage of it, it doesn't matter. Lean to the over, but I'm not getting to the window on anything in this game. North Alabama at BYU. BYU's a 47.5-point favorite, total around 58. It's the fourth and final game for North Alabama. They lost 28-7 at Liberty, 24-17 at home to Jacksonville State, and 24-13 at Southern Miss. BYU's got a week off, or coming off the week off against after beating Boise State. They have a bye week coming up. Their last game potentially is December 12th against San Diego State. Although I did see, Drew, that there's a chance Utah may schedule them for next week because Utah is supposed to play Arizona State, and Arizona State's had all the COVID issues. So there is a chance the Pac-12 will allow Utah to schedule a game against BYU in that game next week. So that would be awesome.
Yeah.
To me, I think BYU can name their score here. I think it's best to isolate BYU in the first half. Hopefully we get something around 28 or under here. The Zach Wilson Heisman hype train has to continue. They'll be focused because they're coming off a bye and they have a bye coming up. So therefore they have to play their starters and they're going to play them and they need to do style points here. So to me, it's BYU first half of around 28 or so for that game. And then the last game, UVA is hosting Abilene Christian. Weird matchup here. UVA about a 39.5-point favorite. Total is 61. Abilene Christian is 1-4. They lost 17-13 at UTEP, 55-23 at Army. It's their last game of the season. They are allowing over almost 250 rushing yards per game. They gave up 400 yards rushing in their most recent performance. UVA coming off that 31-17 win over Louisville. They've got a road trip to Florida State coming up next. They have several quarterbacks here, so it's another team that could take out a starter, put in a backup that's pretty solid here, but they just had their starting nose tackle, Jawan Briggs, transfer out. I don't know how serious UVA takes this game, but there's no way that I'm taking Abilene Christian here. It's an easy pass for me. UVA should score a boatload of points. The question is, could Abilene Christian chip in to that 61? I don't think so, so it's an easy pass in that game.
Mid-major Matt. So I know Utah is playing USC. I was kind of looking at the Utes, and we'll get to that game later, guys. The Every Game on the Board podcast. But mid-major Matt, if BYU plays Utah next Saturday or Friday, whenever the game would be, what would you make the number on that?
It depends on where it is. I don't know where they would play that game. Not that it matters too much because I don't know if there's elevation in Utah. I mean, BYU's got to win. I mean, BYU's in must-win by a lot mode. And Utah, if I'm remembering correctly, Utah's a pretty young team. They lost some key pieces on offense and defense. I think this week's their first game, right? They had their first two games banged. So therefore,
that's what makes this question so tough.
Right.
You haven't seen Utah yet.
Their second game of the season against a BYU team that needs to impress everybody. It's a rivalry game. If it's a BYU, I would say it's like 20.
No 20 way, really?
Yeah, it's a rivalry game, Drew, and BYU has to score, and BYU has to beat up on everybody. So I'd set it pretty high. Maybe, all right, fine, 17.5. I don't know.
Wow, I could be really wrong about that then. I was thinking more like, under a touchdown, but.
Under a touchdown, I would put my life savings on BYU. Put my life. I mean, BYU has to win. BYU, there's a chance that BYU can make the playoffs, but every game they play, they have to put up 50, and they can, and they will. And remember, Zach Wilson, there's an outside shot. He makes it to New York for the Heisman. So they're going to want him to do as much as possible. And who has stopped the BYU so far? So if it's under a touchdown, Drew, I would probably make it a life savings amount. That's why I don't think it is. But I could be way off at 17.5 too.
Yeah, no, guys, in the chat box, let us know real quick because we only got a couple minutes left. But I mean, just a couple of reasons why. Kyle Whittingham as an ATS coach has been great over the long term. And I guess not as much film out on Utah. I'm kind of going off of the first game against a team that has already played a couple games. Has been a great bet, but I guess Utah wouldn't be in that. And a lot matters how Utah looks against USC. Let's face it. I mean, there's going to be a wide range of the movement for this, but it looks like most of the guys in the chat box are looking towards BYU, and we would both make BYU the favorite. But just a big difference in how much of the favorite is, I guess, the big question. But mid-major Matt, great stuff as always, man. Can you leave us with a best bet for this section?
I think you and I agree. It's New Mexico. I think New Mexico is the best bet. So let's go with that there.
All right. So best bet for this section, we got New Mexico, and we can lock them in at +7 across the board. If you got a Pinnacle, count 7.5, but we'll go with +7 for mid-major Matt on New Mexico versus Air Force and Friday Night Lights. I like it as well, guys. So check that out And huge shout out to the chat box. Looks like Tim coming in, Johnny Outlaw, just seeing some 14.5s from Austin. Yeah, that's in between our two numbers. So could see that for sure. But Mid-Major Matt, did you want to throw out anything before we shut this down?
No, I just hope we get a lot of these games we talked about, Drew. Unfortunately, they're going left and right, and it's only Wednesday. So sadly, we're losing college football games. But the ones we do, we're going to enjoy it.
Okay, so we got 10 postponements. If I set the number at 13.5 postponements for all of this weekend college football, would you take the over or the under?
Sadly, I think we're not done yet because there's going to be. Remember, we talked about that Boise State Hawaii game on yesterday. Boise State's going to get their test Friday morning. If it's not going to show them anything, then they're not going to play that game either. I think we're going over, sadly. I think it's 14 or more.
Okay. Well, he's Mid-Major Matt, guys. Follow him on Twitter at Mid-Major Matt. Check out his packages, sportsmemo.com. We got the coupon code MATT30 at checkout for his 30-day package for $70 off. Just $99 there. So check it out, guys. Next 30 days of service for a huge discount. MATT30, the coupon code there. And thanks for joining us. If you could smash the like button. If you're watching on replay, feel free to drop a line below. What you agreed with us on, what you disagreed with us on. It's all welcome here. And guys, we'll be back at 2 o'clock Pacific with Robbie Vino breaking down the next section of games on the college football, every game on the board